Welcome back to another Wheel of Time video. We're going to continue on doing some deep dives, not into characters, not into religion this time, but we're going to deep dive into geographical areas within the Wheel of Time. I'm going to kind of work through different regions, our cities, our towns within the Wheel of Time, and talk about their backstory, their history, geography, all sorts of things like that. So we're going to start with where we began, at least after the prologue, with the two rivers. So this episode is going to be all about the two rivers. And before I get any further, let me just give a quick spoiler warning. This is just going to be mild spoilers. Most of it's just the world building type stuff. No dive into characters or anything like that. It's pretty much safe for anyone to listen to, no matter where you are in the series, even if you're just starting out. Maybe some mild spoilers a quarter of the way through Eye of the World, but mostly just world building. Nothing that's going to affect the overall plot of the Wheel of Time story. So with that being said, let's get right into it. The two rivers. So we'll start with the history of the two rivers. So we'll go all the way back to the beginning. Of course, in the prologue, you start with the breaking of the world. And before the breaking, the Age of Legends, not much is known about this region. In fact, this region probably didn't even exist. After the breaking, everything was kind of shuffled around and changed. So everything kind of in history starts after that point. So after the breaking, 10 major nations came to be. One of those major nations, the main 10, was Manetheren. Manetheren itself was a country, but its capital was also called Manetheren, which sat up right in the Mountains of Mist, just next to where modern day Two Rivers are Emond's Field is. So the history of Manetheren, not much is known about it except for the fall of Manetheren. We know it was a great power. It was a thorn in the Dark One's side. It was a great military power as well, and one of the 10 major nations. So let's fast forward to the fall. During the Trolloc Wars, which was about 1,000 years after the breaking of the world, the Trollocs came down from the Blight and started to invade all of the 10 nations, but especially went after Manetheren. Manetheren was, like I said, the thorn in the Dark One's side, and they really wanted to, the Shadow wanted to knock out this powerhouse. Whenever Manetheren would come to battle, the Trollocs and the Shadow would just fear Manetheren soldiers. So they decided to kind of give a final killing blow. And this would have been an epic battle, like hundreds of thousands, probably, of Trollocs and Dreadlords descended onto the two rivers. And for the most part, King Aemon, who was the king at the time, was able to hold back these forces of the Shadow and actually push them all the way back to where the modern day Terran River is. And we'll get into the geography a little late in this video. But he was able to push them back, but of course was able to hold them there for about 10 days, but was expecting other nations to come to their aid. None of them ever came, including the White Tower itself didn't send aid, even though they were promised aid from lots of different places. Eventually had to fall back, losing a lot in that retreat to what's in now modern day Emond's Field, named after King Aemon, Aemon's Field, where Aemon made his last stand. He had an elite group of soldiers called the Band of the Red Hand, and this is alluded to some parts in the books, but we can get into that more in a spoilery video in the future. But for the sake of this video, just the elite group of soldiers, like I said, were pushed back. All the women and able-bodied men came out, villagers, to help fight this final stand in Emond's Field, and they were eventually defeated on that field. Once Aemon fell, he was actually married to the queen, who was also an Aes Sedai and was his warder. So she felt his death and immediately drew on a ton of the power, killing pretty much the entire Trolloc army, along with most of Manetheren, just boiling it to a crisp and killing herself in the process. And that was it for Manetheren. After that, they never rose to power ever again. Fast forward 2,000 years later, at the time of the books, and it's now a backwoods area of the world. Pretty much forgotten by everyone. I say forgotten. Everyone knows about the two rivers, and we'll get to that when we get to the economy of the two rivers in a bit. But, really talking about the geography, it's really just a secluded area of the Wheel of Time world. Technically, it's part of Andor, but they haven't seen a tax collector in many generations, and no like Queen's Guards in even more generations. It's probably been over 100 years since anyone from the rest of the realm of Andor has come there. So they don't even consider themselves part of Andor, even though technically on maps in Andor, they are part of that. I don't think even if you talk to someone in Two Rivers, they'd even know they're a part of Andor. So let's talk about geography. Here's a map of the Two Rivers. As you can see, it has two rivers, one to the north, one to the south. The river to the north is the Terran River. Yeah, Terran Ferry is the town to the north. And throughout the rest of the two rivers, they kind of don't trust the Terran River folk, Terran Ferry. Going a little further south, you have Watch Hill. This is in between Emmons Field and the Terran River. And then further south, you have Emmons Field. And then all the way down below that is Devon's Ride. And those are really the four villages within the Two Rivers itself. The reason why it's so secluded is because, like you can see, you have the Terran River to the north. You have the White River, used to be the Menethridril, named after Menetherin. To the south, to the east, you have like swamp area. So it's really, really hard to cross. Can't really go through. And then to the west, you have the Mountains of Mist. So you have, and then beyond the White River in the south, you have the Forest of Shadows, which is just an unpopulated forest area that's full of bears and wolves and things like that. Really just secluded and not a good way to access the Two Rivers. Really, there's only one access point, at least at the start of the story, which is the ferry at Terran Ferry that goes across the river. Other than that, there's no bridges going in, and there's no other way to access it besides going over the Mountains of Mist or some other treacherous type path. So being that, they've been secluded for really thousands of years and live their own life there. Being that they're so secluded, they developed their own form of government. So it's really unique in the Two Rivers, at least in Emmons Field. That is really the only place in all of Wheel of Time you see democracy.
I didn't know we had a king. I thought we were an autonomous collective.
You're fooling yourself. We're living in a dictatorship.
There's a mayor of the village, and it's really separated into two different councils. You have the village council, which is made of the men, led by the mayor. And then you have a women's group called the Women's Circle, which is led by the Wisdom, who is appointed, not elected, or might be elected by the Women's Circle, but are chosen. And they're kind of the two heads of government. Both women and men kind of rule in their own powers and in their own stations and rule together. So it is an elected body, at least the mayor is, and then the women and men both take their roles in various aspects of government and making decisions. Oftentimes you'll hear very early in the books, women's circle business, or this is for the village council to discuss, basically whether the men or the women take responsibility for making decisions. Going to the culture of the Two Rivers, the way of life there is pretty much farming. Everyone, there's a few people that have craft type things, they're not no merchants, but they might have like Sinbui, for example. It's a character you meet very early in the series, and he's the thatcher. So they have thatch roofs, meaning it's like straw or grass just kind of plopped on top of a roof, keep the water out. Stone buildings, pretty rudimentary. Everyone else there is pretty much just a farmer. Lots of apple orchards. They're known for their apple brandy and cider. So they do make their hard drinks that they serve at the Wine Spring Inn. And then also known for their sheep. Lots of wool comes out, good sturdy Two Rivers wool. And then tobacco. Which is like tobacco. That's their main cash crop there. And they don't even know how much it's worth. Actually, Two Rivers tobacco is revered throughout all of the world, which is why the Two Rivers is known. But only a few merchants actually finally make the way all the way over there because it's so far out of the way. It really is not worth their financial time unless they can gather a bunch of tobacco and sell it elsewhere because it can go for a lot of money in other parts of the world. But as far as just regular passerbyers or tourism or anything like that, none of that. Everyone knows everybody, and pretty much just a handful of merchants that they all know are the same people that visit every year. They do like to have their celebratory times. They have several different holidays. The big one is Beltane, which is at the end of winter's night. So it's right in the beginning of spring. This is where the women come of age. They have a big ceremony for it. There's also a harvest festival they have and a couple other holidays spread throughout the year. But you think about just a really, really country, a little village. And that's what, Two Rivers is. I can assume that both Watch Hill and Devon Ride also have their similar holidays and probably have similar structures because they do have wisdoms as well. That's mentioned in the books. So you can assume they have some kind of similar governmental structure in the other areas, not just in Emmonsfield. And then, like I mentioned, the economy. Everyone's farmers. I would guess that most of way of dealing with things is barter. Not a lot of cash or gold travels through the Two Rivers, so a lot of it's just trading things. Tam Althor at the beginning is bringing some apple brandy to the Wine Spring Inn, and I guess he gets honey cakes and stuff like that for it. I'm sure they trade tobacco and wool and everything like that, and they just trade their goods for other goods. And so that pretty much makes up the Two Rivers. Throughout the story, I'm not going to get too much into that, but just wanted to kind of give you a brief overview of what the Two Rivers are. This is kind of like a 101 on the geography in different areas of the Wheel of Time world. So if you guys have anything else you want to add about the Two Rivers, feel free to leave something in the comments. I don't have that much to add because I'm trying to keep this as spoiler free as possible. Not really get into the future of the Two Rivers, but just talk about the culture, the geography, the government, economy, and just a brief history. I'm going to do more in depth in other parts where there's going to be a whole lot more history to it in future videos. But if you guys have comments or anything else you want to add about the Two Rivers, feel free to let me know. I might make a follow-up if there's enough stuff that comes from the comments that like, hey, you should say this. But this is really geared to those people that are getting into the series, that are just looking to find out about different areas and learn more about, maybe a little bit of history and learn about how different regions interact within these books. So hope you enjoy these videos. Like, subscribe, let me know what you think about it. And until next time, peace.